Good afternoon, sir. This is Dr. Yogesh
Afternoon.
Devang from LNCT Bhopal, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So first of all, thank you very much for accepting invitation to deliver a talk in our FDP.
Thank you very much for you and your institution to give me opportunity to deliver a talk. Yeah.
So, sir, shall we start the session?
Yeah.
Sir, first of uh, all the participants are there. So, first of all, I will introduce you to the esteemed speaker, Dr. Surjit Kumar Paul. He is from IIT Patna and he is currently assistant professor in IIT Patna, Department of Mechanical Engineering. And he completed his PhD from Jadarpur University in Kolkata in the year 2012. And currently, he has also worked as a researcher at R&D Tata Steel Limited, Jamshedpur, for 3 years and 11 months. After that, he worked also as Alfred Daikin postdoctoral research fellow at Daikin University, Australia for 2 years. Then he worked as senior scientist, fatigue and fracture group at CSR National Metallurgical Laboratory, Jamshedpur for 1 year. He is working as assistant professor currently in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna for last 4 years. Dr. Pauls has documented research output in the area of cyclic plasticity, sheet metal forming, high strain rate deformation, fatigue crack growth, multi-axial fatigue, continuum and multi-phase micromechanics based finite element material modeling, atomistic simulation also. And he has published 78 research papers in peer-reviewed international journals, and he is currently guiding 9 PhD students. Okay, so now the session will start, and now over to you, sir.
Thank you for brief introduction. So my voice is clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So slides are visible?
Yes, sir. Slides are visible.
Okay. So in the last session, Dr. Jadhav talked about a brief review of different forming processes and numerical methods. But in this lecture, so I will discuss only a specific topics, but in details, the physics and finite element simulations. But I will not go to the numerical procedure, so rather application based. So Hole expansion ratio. So this is the topics, and the maximum presentation material I have collected from my a review article published in Material just last year. So maximum material I have collected from this paper on. Okay. So all the reference of the collected slides are given at the bottom of the slide. You can also go to there and look in details. So what is the forming process? Seed metal forming process. So we take a sheet and put the seed material in between the dies and punch. So we normally tell the dies remains fixed and punch can move. Okay. So die and punch have a specific shape, and when they come closer, okay, so my seed material, that means workpiece, will be given a specific shape. Okay, the example is given here. So like that, I can give shape of any seed material. Okay, so in normal application, we can see the different seed material product. One example is the automotive. So car outer body, uh, all parts are body parts. Maximum body parts are manufactured by seed metal forming process only. And if you see the utensils, even metal drinking water bottles, or are basically manufactured by seed metal manufacturing process. Okay, so in this process, we deform a sheet, but how much? Okay, there should be a limit. Okay, up to that we can deform, and beyond that, if we want to deform, the material will fail and defective product will produce. Okay, so how much we can deform, that is defined by a limit. Everywhere failure criteria is used. In case of seed metal forming also, so a failure criteria is used, that is known as forming limit diagram. Okay, suppose suppose I want to manufacture this product. Okay, so I can deform. Okay, and the strain state I can put in the major strain versus minor strain plot. Okay, so you can see this red curve. So red curve is the forming limit curve. Okay, so if all my data points lies below this red lines, that is forming limit curve, so material will be safe, and above this, so failure will happen. Okay, you can see in this product, the red spots are visible here, so that means failure may happen in that place. Okay, so that is the use of forming limit diagram. So before the production, okay, so I can simulate in any available software and check, yes, with this parameter, with this material, is that part is formable or not. Okay, so if I during that simulation process, if I see that yes, there is a probability of failure, then there is option that I can move to more ductile material, so that the more deformation it can survive, or I can simplify my die design. Okay, so the complexity of the profile I can modify, or I can optimize the blank. Okay, so a sheet I initially take and then form it. Okay, so that initial sheet geometry I can optimize. By these three methods, I can reduce the deformation in particular location, and then form a sound product. Okay, so in this case, they optimize the blank shape. Okay, so blank shape here you can see that little bit cut, and after that they are all the deformed positions located below the forming limit. Okay, like that in any industry, they use this forming limit curve to optimize the sheet metal forming processes. Okay, so that is the basic failure criteria, okay, used in all sheet metal forming industries. But apart from these, there are requirement of other failure criteria that I will discuss today. So one automotive part you can see here. So that part they design on the basis of forming limit diagram. Yes, to deform this, all the strain state lies below the forming limit diagram. So sound forming is expected, but despite that, in some location corner you can see there is a crack. Okay, so this is one example I have collected from Carlos that published in Procedure of Manufacturing. The second example, that car inner door panel. Okay, so there also you can see that cracks forms from the edge. Okay, this location. Okay, this location also. That despite that their loading point lies below the forming limit diagram, but crack forms. But why? First, understand the stretch fungibility. That means first they take a sheet, so that called as bank. Okay, share that bank and give some shape. Okay, so this give shape it and then bend. So during that bending, what happened? This edge, okay, the tensile deformation happens. So due to this tensile deformation, this crack may start from this edge for certain case, not all cases. Okay, so this is the stretch flanging operation And to define that stress fringing operation, forming limit curve is not enough. Okay, so so another failure criteria is required. So uh, that is defined as whole expansion ratio. We'll discuss in details. Okay, so so question may arise: if a loading point lies below FLC, still failure can happen? Answer is yes, failure can happen. We can see the two examples. So for all type of steels, so I will exclusively discuss on steel because I work in steel only, but the same thing will be valid for other classes of metals. Okay, but I will discuss exclusively on steels. For all other types of steel, this will happen. For soft steel, like interfacial fresh steels, extra deep drawing quality steels, okay, that are used normally outer body of a car. So that is rare. That means if for this kind of soft steel, if the points lies below FLC, then failure will not happen. But for hard steel, advanced high strength steel like dual phase steel, complex phase steels, to induce plasticity steel, transformation induced plasticity steel, that means when the strength is high, for that case is so this type of failure may happen. That means edge cracking. Okay, so soft steel, this problem was not there 30-40 years before. So you can see that the old model car, that means Premier Podini and Ambassador, they are heavyweight, okay, and soft grade steels are used at the outer body parts. But nowadays, the lightweight car is required because you know that how much fuel costs today. Okay, if the car weight reduce, then fuel efficiency will increase and the cost also reduce. Okay, that's why they want to move for a high strength material because they can't compromise the passenger safety. That means safety of the car, they can't compromise. So safety remain constant, but you have to reduce weight. So that is possible by means of reducing by use of high strength material. That's why from soft material to high strength material move is required. Okay. So to experimentally determine the stretch fungibility or hole expansion ratio, what is required? I need a specimen of that is defined in ISO standard. The number of the ISO standard I have mentioned. So 100 mm by 100 mm sheet, and at the center there is a 10 mm diameter hole. Okay, so hole normally punching process it can be manufactured, but by other method that means drilling, okay, EDM cut, laser cut, other way also possible. So in ISO method, it is specified that this 10 mm diameter hole have to expand by a 60-degree conical punch. Okay, and when throw thickness crack will happen, then stop that test and measure the diameter. You know the initial diameter, and after expansion, what is the final diameter? That is DF. Okay, so hole expansion ratio, it is the ratio of the change in diameter by diameter. Okay, change in diameter, the final diameter minus initial diameter by initial diameter. So that is the hole expansion ratio. So if it as it is expressed in percentage terms, so you have to multiply with 100. Okay, so like that experimentally you can determine the hole expansion ratio. That means measure of the stress fungibility. Okay, so during high strength material forming, you have to keep your the deformation point. That means strain state below these two limits. One is the forming limit curve. The second one is hole expansion ratio. Okay. So one the schematically I discussed. The initially so D0 is the diameter of the hole, and after expansion That means when true thickness crack will form, that after that I can determine the diameter df and determine the hole expansion ratio. Clear? So why hole expansion ratio is required? Because of high strength steels or high strength materials, even if my data point lies below the forming limit diagram, still failure may happen. So this failure should be addressed, okay? So that can be addressed by hole expansion ratio. So hole expansion ratio and forming limit diagram both are extensively used in sheet metal forming industries. So before jump into the forming finite element simulation, we have to understand that what we can incorporate in the finite element simulation and what not. Okay, so everything we can't simulate with the finite element simulation, so it have also limitation. So we have to understand. So with this one example, we can understand the physics and what we can do in through the finite element simulation and what we can't do. We have to understand. We'll gradually understand this. Okay, so the hole expansion ratio of the steels depend upon the certain factors. Punchiometry, okay? Though in ISO standard, it is mentioned as conical punch of 60-degree cone angle, but other flat bottom hemispherical punch also used in some countries, okay? So effect of punchiometry, mechanical properties of the steel sheet, hole preparation method, that means if I use punched hole, drill, ADM hole, the what will be the HA, microstructure of the steels, how it will affect the hole expansion ratio, we will gradually understand. The first one is the hole preparation. Okay, so hole preparation, if I prepare the hole by various methods, first branching, drilling, EDM, laser cutting. Okay, so this hole preparation method, are we able to incorporate in the finite element simulation? Let's understand. Okay, so for dual phase steel, these red dots, okay, so this is the forming limit curve, okay, of this dual phase steel. And if I determine the hole expansion ratio for two conditions, one is punched hole, another is rimmed hole, okay. So in case of punched hole, the hole expansion ratio this much, only 60%, okay. But in case of rimmed hole, so it is 150%. So that means the edge quality, okay, edge quality affects the hole expansion ratio, okay. So let's see other examples. So dual phase steel, if I test, okay, one is punched hole, another is EDM cut hole, okay. So in case of punched hole, the HER is only 35%, and in case of EDM cut hole, 110%, okay. But you have to remember, in industrial forming operation, mainly the punched edged are used because punching is the fastest process, okay, fast and cheap, okay. When industrial any form product, the cost and the speed is very important, okay. That's why the punching process, maximum case it is used. Okay, for different types of alloys, the different hole preparation method it used is punch, ADM, mill, laser cut. You can see that hole expansion ratios are different, okay. In case of EDM cut and mill condition, the hole expansion ratio is highest, okay. So why? If you prepare the hole by punching method, punching means what? You place the sheet in between dies and punch. Suppose this is die, okay, suppose this is die and this is punch, okay. So if this punch move, that means the fracture happen in the red zone. Fracture means what? Shear failure. Shear failure means what? So material fail in that region. So if fail happens, that means defect will be visible the surround area. Okay, you can see the zoomed portion here. There is fail region and grain flow like this. Okay, so from that shear strain, how much the grain flow you can measure, what will be the angle like that. So if you check a punched edge, okay, you can see some zone. Okay, shear drop zone, severe plastic deformation happens, shear surface, then fracture. In this fracture zone, you can see at the bottom part bar. Okay, the researcher do the microscopy and see on scanning electron microscope. They see what in the fracture zone, this and the bar. Okay, this is the bar location, the bar. Okay, and the fracture zone, they see some dimples. Okay, because of the heavy deformation. Okay, in that region and failure, the dimples. If they observe, okay, on the fracture surface, what they will observe? The dimples and cracks. Okay, dimples and cracks they observe on the fracture surface, and beneath the fracture surface they also observe dimples. That means what? The some distance from the fracture zones there is defect. Okay, in this zone there is defect present. Okay, how much defect, how long this zone will be, that depends upon the punching parameter as well as material. Okay, so it will vary if the clearance vary and material vary, thickness also. Okay, so different condition, this zone will be different. Okay, so whole preparation, is it possible to incorporate in the finite element simulation? Answer is possible during research. Okay, like as the academician, we publish paper and work in very small specimen, it is possible, but industry not possible. Why? Because for each case you have to measure through microscopy that how much this damage zone, okay, and how much damage, that means through hardness and other method you have to determine the damage in that zone, and you have to specify during simulation that yes, my shear affected zone will be this much. Okay, and how much you have to specify. So it is very difficult in industrial forming operation. So that's why I have written possible for research, but for industrial operation it is difficult. Okay, so for research purpose, what you have to do from microscopy, you have to measure the average size of the damage zone and specify the damage in terms of equivalent strain in the finite element model. Like that you can incorporate, okay, in finite element simulation. The second question will come, the microstructure. Okay, because in different material you will see the different microstructure. Okay, in case of high strength steel, dual phase, the ferrite martensite, complex phase steel, ferrite martensite, benite, perlite, there. Transformation induced plasticity steels. Okay, so their austenite phase are there. Okay, during initial condition, when deformation happened, that austenite transform into martensite. So deformation induced martensite transformation will happen in case of trip steel. For tube steel, twin induced plasticity steel, so during deformation twinning will happen. Okay, so all these complex microstructure case, what will happen? Okay, let's see. For if you go to this paper, you will get the detailed information that for high strength steel, if one phase only present, okay, the grains are equiaxed, void nucleation sites, that means inclusion precipitates, that shape is very small and evenly distributed, then your strength and ductility will be optimized and hole expansion ratio will be high. And similarly for multi-phase steels, suppose in dual phase steel, the ferrite martensite present. So volume fraction of martensite, the strength difference between ferrite and martensite, okay, their distribution also, all these parameters will determine the strength and ductility of that multi-phase steels, and hence the hole expansion ratio also. So all these things we can incorporate in the finite element simulation. No. In case of finite element simulation, you have to understand the finite element simulation. In that case, we use one material property as an input. Okay. So macroscopic response of that steel, okay, we can capture. But microstructural level information we can't simulate. Okay. From normal finite element simulation, but from representative volume element based finite element simulation, we can simulate the deformation and damage in the microstructural level. The answer is same, that research purpose we can simulate, but for industrial forming operation we can't simulate. Okay, let's see one example that is collected from my site only. The dual phase steel is there. So in between the black spots are the martensite, and remaining portions are the ferrite. Okay, if you deform during uniaxial deformation, uniaxial tensile deformation, you can see that within the ferrite also the deformation, that means strain, are different in different locations. Okay, obviously damage will be different. Where high deformation is there, so failure will happen from there only. Okay, all this information from macroscopic finite element simulation you can't simulate. Okay, so you can simulate nowadays. The features available that multi-scale simulation, that means some information you can extract from the macro scale finite element simulation and use that information as a boundary condition for small element, okay, like this, and there the phase and other property you can input, give as input, and simulate in the microstructural level. Okay, so these two conditions we already read. The third one, the mechanical property, the tensile stress and response, yield stress, ultimate tensile stress, uniform elongation, total elongation, post uniform elongation of the material can we incorporate in the finite element simulation. Okay, let's see that how the tensile properties affect the hole expansion ratio. Okay, so if I plot in y-axis is the hole expansion ratio and x-axis is the yield stress, then see this graph. Okay, for soft steel like IF, interfacial free steel, deep drawing steel, back hardened steel, all these steels, the yield stress is low and hole expansion ratio is high. Similarly, UTS, okay, ultimate tensile stress is low and hole expansion ratio is high. When strength is high, the hole expansion ratio is low. Okay. Similarly, the coefficient of normal anisotropy we'll discuss in details later. Okay, if I plot the hole expansion ratio for a high anisotropy, actually this coefficient of normal anisotropy, it is you can see this is a property that resists the thinning of the material. So resistance of thinning high, that means ductility will be more. So ductility will be more, so hole expansion ratio is also high. Similarly, total elongation. So total elongation high means hole expansion ratio high, but there is some exceptions like this. What is those steel? Twip steel. Though in case of twip steel, total elongation is high, but its hole expansion ratio is poor. Okay, so this can be explained from post uniform elongation also. So post uniform elongation means after UTS, what is the elongation? Okay. So post uniform elongation, this problem solved because for tube steel post uniform elongation less, so that's why hole expansion ratio also less. Okay. So there is a nice correlation with the tensile properties, but there will be some exceptions, and you have to understand the physics of the deformation of that material. So how it will be linked with the hole expansion ratio. So mechanical properties, all that can be incorporated in the finite element simulation. Okay. From the input material property, that means the flow curve we can give as an input. Okay. So that means all these strain hardening, everything will be included. That means yes, we can do. Okay. Macroscopic scale. But to simulate necking and failure, some other model also required. So that is damage model or failure law, that is also necessary. Okay. Because if you take a rectangular shape body and load it, okay, in any finite element simulation, okay, suppose strain hardening also there in that material. So there will be necking if it is a perfect rectangle, okay, 10 mm suppose width, 10 mm everywhere, not 10.01 also, okay. So, and material is strain hardening, okay, like this, strain hardening. So there will not be necking at any condition, okay. So incorporate the necking, you required, I think you already know this, two conditions. One is the geometrical inhomogeneity, okay. So that is extensively used by researcher. So you have to use the thickness or width little bit less. So in other place it is 10 mm, so it is 99.99, okay, mm width. So geometrical inhomogeneity or material inhomogeneity. So suppose in that rectangle some impurity present, okay. So in these two conditions, the necking possible, okay. So to define necking, you need material inhomogeneity or geometrical inhomogeneity. Geometrical inhomogeneity is very normal because if we want to fabricate the 10 mm with tensile sample, so it is not possible in any manufacturing method, okay, exactly 10 mm with sample. So it will obviously vary. Some location it will be 10 mm, some location it will be 10.01 mm, okay. So that's why this, because of these two reasons, one is this, another is the dog bone shape of the tensile specimen, we observe necking, okay. So that means to introduce the damage and failure, we required the law to simulate the necking, okay. And fourth condition is the punch geometry. This different researcher use different punch geometries, conical, flat bottom, hemispherical, different types of punch used to expand the hole. Yes, we can easily do because through solid modeling, we can introduce different punch geometry and we can easily incorporate in finite element simulation. Okay. So as a gist, the primary factors affecting hole expansion ratios are microstructure, mechanical properties, hole preparation method, and punch geometry. Okay. So what incorporation is possible in industrial finite element simulation? Microstructure not possible directly, indirectly possible. That means from macroscopic simulation, we have to extract boundary condition and use small scale representative volume element, and in that volume element microstructural features and their evolution you can simulate, okay. So that's why I've written directly not possible, but indirectly possible. Mechanical properties, yes, possible. Okay, so introducing proper hardening law and failure law or damage law, we can easily simulate. Whole preparation method, not directly possible. Okay, span geometry possible. Okay, so from this slide, you can easily understand that what scale, that means we are discussing at the macro scale, what information or what simulation we can perform, okay, in finite element, from a finite element simulation, okay. So some we can do, some we can't do, you have to remember, okay. So mechanical property, pan geometry, we can easily do, but whole preparation method, microstructure, it is a little bit difficult. Okay, now there is various types of model possible, okay, to model this whole expansion ratio. Okay, that means stretch flanging operation, axisymmetric, okay, plane stress to cell element, or from 3D element, okay, and for material isotopic materials and isotopic materials, various possible, and from different type of simulation, different type of information we can extract. Okay, let slowly understand what are the different processes and what information we can extract. Axisymmetric model first. Okay, so if we see that conical punch, okay, if I take this curve, okay, if I take this curve and rotate 360 degree, then generation of this cone possible. Okay, that means this object is axisymmetric. Okay, so that means axisymmetric modeling of this whole expansion ratio possible. Okay, so let's do axisymmetric analysis. Okay, so in axisymmetric analysis, so we will take this part only. Okay, and what we can do, so this is the seat, obviously after deformation. So before deformation, this is the seat, this is the top die, bottom die, and this is the punch. Okay, so like this you can generate this axisymmetric body. Okay, so you have to give some input, okay, in any finite element simulation software, Abacus, ANSYS, COMSOL, various platforms are available, but I use Abacus only. Okay, but in other software, similar type of simulation also possible. So material hardening, isotropic hardening. Okay, isotropic hardening, that means this hardening behavior, it is same in all directions. Okay, we will discuss. Yield criteria, von Mises, isotropic material, von Mises yield criteria used. Element, we use axisymmetric element. Implicit analysis we will do. As this is very simple problem, axisymmetric, that's why implicit analysis we are using. But if we use some damage model and complex geometry, then implicit model may not be enough. Okay, there will be convergence issue. So for that case, you have to shift to explicit analysis. But for this simple case, we can do implicit analysis. We have to define the coefficient of friction between the die and specimen. We can collect from literature or from experiment you can measure. what output you want. Okay, that is also important. Here the output I have specified true stains. Okay, all true stains components, including principles, all plastic strains, equivalent plastic strains, that is equivalent plastic strain magnitude and stress. Okay, all stress components, including this all stresses, principles, okay, in plane, out of plane, pressure. What is the requirement of pressure? Because stress axiality, how to define stress axiality is the hydrostatic stress by equivalent stress. Hydrostatic stress, what is hydrostatic stress? So it is the stress, suppose in 1, 2, 3 direction 3 stress acting. So sigma 1 plus sigma 2 plus sigma 3 by 3. Okay. So if this test axiality it is 0.33, okay, so then it is uniaxial. Okay, for 0.57 that is plane strain, for 0.66 it is equibiaxial. So if we able to determine this test axiality, then or various ways also, the strain ratios, the ratios of minor strain by major strain, there we can tell that what type of deformation happening in various locations. Okay, so what is your requirement? Accordingly, you have to specify the output. Okay, so small snapshot I have taken to understand. Okay, so here in this case, I used both the dies, okay, both the dies and punch as the uh, rigid body, okay, and this axisymmetric, this seat, okay, so that is only deformable, elastoplastic, and the yield criteria is defined by isotropic material, von Mises yield criteria, and the strain hardening, I use the L-Megad law. I'll see that law I have introduced. Okay, like that, we have to draw the geometries and assemble it. Okay, and so stepwise, here you can see the all these steps you have to perform. First, generate that part, define the properties of this each part. Okay, assemble, then step, interaction, load, mesh, then job. Okay, all these steps you have to complete in any simulation software. So this is the snapshot of Abaqus, but in other software also the same. Then you have to define the material properties for the seat. I am defining the elastic plastic, obviously hardening type isotropic, you can see here. The isotropic, the experimental from tensile test, you can determine the tensile stress and curve, okay, and fit any law, L-Megad, Lodwin, or Boyce, okay, fit that law and that fed into this simulation, okay. And these data points, suppose this is up to UTS, so you have to extend it because in sheet metal forming, large deformations are there. Suppose a material uniform elongation is suppose 10%. So in biaxial deformation, without any failure, 20% deformation you can give easily. Okay, so that's why extrapolation also required. So you have to specify the material like this. Then the rigid body you have to specify. To specify rigid body, you have to first create one reference point, and with that reference point, the body you have to type. Okay, so and then you have to specify the all the boundary conditions. Okay, that means this die fixed. Okay, or some force is applied. So in this reference point you have to apply, and all this it will be transmitted to all this rigid body. And for this punch, this is my reference point, and in this reference point I'll give the movement in this direction, and this rigid body will move this direction. Okay, so I will hold this seed metal between these two dies. One die fixed, another die I'll give some pressure. So I'll hold this up. This is the first stage, and second stage I'll give some displacement on this punch. Then you have to create steps. Okay, so in these steps you have to specify the increment size. So depending upon the increment size, your number of data points that will be available for your analysis. Okay, so this is also very important steps. And then you have to determine the coefficients of friction between punch and your seat, dies and seat. So their penalty method and this friction coefficient I have mentioned. Okay, so you can also specify the coefficient of friction dependent upon the other parameter also, like load and temperature, because it will vary. And then what observation we'll get from this axisymmetric analysis. Okay, so from this axisymmetric analysis, okay, I did this analysis for extra deep drawing steel, and after 108% hole expansion, okay, so my major and minor strains are plotted here. Okay, obviously through simulation you will get only this profile, and after 360-degree rotation, that means the only visualization. Okay, so you will get this shape. Okay, so what you can see, that major strain, okay, that is concentrated at the whole edge. Okay, gradually it is reducing if I move from whole edge to other edge. Okay, so major strain concentrated here, minor strain, that means negative direction, it is also concentrated here. If you do the ratio at the edge, you will get 0.33. Okay, so that means uniaxial tensile deformation you are getting there. Clear? If you calculate the stress axiality, okay, so from that formula, that you will get pressure from this simulation. Okay, so minus pressure is equal to hydrostatic stress, and hydrostatic stress divided by equivalent stress. If you calculate this, okay, in post processing you will get the stress axiality. Stress axiality here uniaxial, and they are gradually changing. Okay, so this is the two things. And another thing, okay, so I take 3 points, one at the inner edge, middle, and outer edge. The 3 point I collected the data points, that means deformation paths. Okay, I want to calculate. So major strain and minor strain versus time, the data I have collected and then plotted in the minor strain versus major strain plot, minor strain versus major strain plot. Okay, if the material follow uniaxial deformation, because we have used the von Mises-Hill criteria, so this major strain should be -2 of minor strain. Okay, if this path follows, then it will be purely uniaxial. Look, the 3 edges, okay, outer, mid, and inner. Okay, outer edges, from outer edge, from the beginning of the deformation is purely uniaxial in nature, but at the inner edge, okay, so there is initial deviation, after that uniaxial. Okay, so the deformation at inner edge, mid, and outer edge also little bit different. Okay, and during the whole preparation method, we can observe that the bar forms. Okay, this bar form at the bottom. Okay, there bar from the bottom at the bottom of the point surface, and there are also lots of voids defects presence. Okay, so if I put the sample bar up or bar down during hole expansion ratio test, my result will be different. Why? Because the deformation at the inner and outer edge are different. Okay, so if I put the bar down position, my hole expansion ratio will be high. For same material, same punch condition, for all other parameter remain constant. Or if I put bar up condition, then my hole expansion ratio will be less. Why? Because of this. Because at inner and outer edge, the deformation will be little bit different. Outer edge deformation will be little bit higher. Okay, so bar up condition means bar already a damaged state is already there. So if you deform, outer edge will be higher strain, so it will fail early. Okay, so then, so no other information we can extract from this axisymmetric analysis. Please remember, because we are doing this axisymmetric analysis, and then visualization purpose, we are rotating this and generate this 3D visualization. But remember, my analysis is this only. Okay, so the deformation at different angle, okay, it can't be done through this axisymmetric analysis. Then the cell element, okay, using cell element, isotropic material, how we can analyze. Okay, so this is the whole expansion test sample. Okay, and you can see if I do this simulation for this 1 quarter sample, okay, then the replicate, then total sample we can generate. So there is no use to simulate the whole sample. So 1 quarter you can simulate, and then do mirror image during visualization, and you will get the whole sample result. Okay, so 1 quarter will do. Okay, so this is the DP 590 steel sheet, 2-stage strain curve. The black dots are the experimental curve, and from the curve fitting, we fit the Elmegard law that is extensively used in industry. So their stress is equal to some initial yield stress, some material constant K into 1 minus exponential 1 constant into equivalent plastic strain plus some another constant C into plastic strain. So here material constant are yield stress K, B and C. Okay, all these material constant you can determine from this data fitting, and this constant value are given here. Okay, so you can do the uniaxial tensile test from engineering to 2 formula. You can determine the 2 stress strain experimental. Obviously, up to uniform elongation you can do. Okay, so obviously for DP 590 steel, this is 60% is not uniform elongation. Okay, so around 15 to 20% uniform elongation. So here I use the digital image correlation Okay, through this digital image correlation during the experimental process, I generate the stress strain curve, experimental stress strain curve after uniform elongation also. Okay, so this material input will give, so this is isotropic hardening law. That means suppose your yield surface is this, okay, von Mises yield surface, a ellipse, okay. So it will expand in all direction with plastic strain. It will expand in all direction, okay. So that's why isotropic. Iso expansion means equally expand in all directions, okay. So this isotropic material hardening law will define. Okay. Next, in simulation, first we read that yes, to introduce necking, we have to specify any geometrical discontinuity or material discontinuity. Okay. Without this, no difference I will get within this 1/4 sample. Okay. So I define one geometrical discontinuity, the red portion. Suppose the everywhere thickness is 1 mm and their thickness is 0.99 mm. Okay, so that is geometrical discontinuity. So small region where the geometry is little bit less, thickness is little bit less. How much less? You have to also calibrate, okay, from uniaxial tensile test. You can't take any abrupt, yes, I take 0.01, 0.005, not like that. So there is a procedure. So that paper, the procedure is explained. So from uniaxial tensile test, you have to calibrate and define that how much geometrical discontinuity you have to take. Okay. So after that, you have to mesh. Okay. The cell element I have used. Okay. So in cell element, along the thickness, you can generate the deformation gradient. So you have to take 5, 5, 7, 9, 11 like that integration points. So minimum 5 you have to take, 11 also good. So to define this, so why I take the geometrical discontinuity? The cause is that without this material or geometrical discontinuity, you can't simulate any damage or failure. Okay, so you have to introduce failure law, you have to introduce geometrical or material discontinuity, then you can do. Clear? In any cell element simulation, if you do normal simulation, you can observe that there will be very small variation in some locations. Okay, that is due to numerical error. Okay, so during competition, there is some approximation. Okay, if your element size is small, so small approximation in each step that will be accumulated and there will be a very small variation. Okay, so that is due to error. So that is different case, but to introduce damage or failure, you have to introduce some geometrical or material discontinuity. So I have introduced geometrical discontinuity, take a small thickness variation in that red region. Okay. So material hardening isotropic L-Megad law I discussed. Yield criteria von Mises, that means the same yield stays in rolling direction and transverse direction. Suppose I take a sheet, okay, one is the rolling direction, okay, and perpendicular this transverse direction, that means with direction. So yield stress in this direction or this direction same. Suppose in a rolling direction material yielded at 100 MPa as bias direction, it will yield also 100 MP. Okay, it's the same. The yield criteria, von Mises yield criteria I have used. Element, cell element I have used. Explicit I have used. Why explicit? I discussed that if you introduce damage, okay, contact and little bit higher size model, okay, there may be some issues in implicit, but um, implicit also you can do by I have taken explicit because of damage. I use to generate crack. That is not possible in implicit model. Okay, I'll generate crack during the simulation. That's why explicit I have chosen. Friction coefficient. So in this case also, the top dies, bottom dies I have not shown because that will be more clumsy. That's why the top dies, similar way you have to choose one reference point and define this rigid body. Okay. The second, our specimen, the seat element, you have to define the thickness and how many thickness integration points you can want. You can specify. Okay. So here I have chosen 5, but you can choose 11, 7 like that. Okay. Why uneven number? Because then one data point will lie in the neutral axis. That's all. Okay. So even number also you can choose, but uneven number, why I have chosen? Because one data point that will lie on the neutral axis and then other will be symmetry. Okay. If fine, then one will be a neutral axis and 2 will be upper side and 2 will be bottom side, like that. So 11 will be good. Then you have to, here you can see that damage evolution and ductile damage criteria you have to specify. Okay. So when failure will happen, suppose at 0.8 strain, at stress taxability 0.33, that means uniaxial tensile deformation, a failure will be happen. Okay. At fracture energy like that, you have to specify. And all these things you have to determine from the test. Okay. From uniaxial tensile test, failure happen. Okay. At the failure location, you can determine what is the thickness. Okay. And from there, you can determine the fracture strain. Or if you have digital image correlation setup, from there you can determine the local strains. Okay. So local strain before failure, that will be the fracture strain. Okay. The fracture strain you have to specify. So that means if my equivalent strain reach that limit, so failure will happen. Okay. So after failure, mesh deletion criteria I have specified that the mesh will be deleted and crack will be formed here. So dynamic explicit, the step we have to define friction coefficient. Okay. Tangential penalty method, 0.2 friction coefficient you have to determine. And how many data points you want to generate. So that you have to specify during dynamic explicit analysis here. Okay. So more data point you generate, the more smoothness will be there. So all these parameter you have to choose. So here some additional parameter you have to choose to determine the damage and thickness change. Okay. So section thickness, the damage variable you have to choose. Okay. So we have chosen during this analysis. Okay. Then see the what observation will get, additional information will get. Okay. So axisymmetric problem, it is simple. Now into this cell element, in cell element, there we introduce damage and isotopic material model we use. Okay. What additional observation will get. So the in plane maximum principal strain, if I plot, The same thing, we'll observe that deformation gradient is there. So deformation, for determining the deformation gradient, I take a line. Okay. So take a line. So like this, that starting from the edge and going away from the edge. Okay. Uh, and there, with the time, if I plot the maximum principal stress, so it is increasing. So at the edge, deformation is highest. When we are moving away from the edge, the deformation is coming down. So what observation will get? So you will get that initially the localization start there and crack will form from the edge. Okay. So edge cracking will happen in case of conical punch. Okay. If we expand the material, expand the specimen with conical punch, then cracks start from the edge. Okay. So as the cracks start from the edge, so the defect introduced during the hole preparation method obviously affect the hole expansion ratio. This is normal. Okay. So what's happened? To determine this, I take 2 points, one at the edge, another at the one at the damage zone, another at the sound zone. Okay, these 2 points, 1 and 2, I have chosen, and then plot in the major strain versus minor strain fault for this material. So this is my forming limit diagram, and that sound region, the green color. Okay, at the damage region, this red color. You can see that it follow the pure uniaxial deformation. Okay, so pure uniaxial deformation happen, and then analyze at the last frame. So at the edge, all the 3 strains are plotted: maximum principal, minimum principal, and thickness strain. That means out of plane principal strains plotted. So maximum principal, minimum principal, if you do the ratio, and also it is reducing like this. So at the edge, uniaxial tensile deformation happens. Clear? This information we can extract for this conical punch. The next, flat bottom punch. Instead of conical punch, if I use flat bottom punch, what will happen? Okay, like this flat bottom. Okay, here flat. What will happen? After this, the localization starts here and cracking starts here. So you can see not from the edge. Okay, it is slightly interior. Okay, slightly interior than the seat edge. The crack start from here. Obviously, as the cracking not start from the edge, so edge property will not affect the HER value for this punch geometry. This is also observed by experimentation. So I have not done this experimentation. This experimentation done by Suzuki. Okay, they did this experimentation and so the cracking and fracture start little bit away from the seat edge. Clear? So for this flat bottom punch, the cracking starts away from the seat edge, and also the HER for flat bottom punch not depend upon the edge property. Okay. Let's see why this is happening. What is the cause behind it? The 2 point I have selected the same way, one at the damage zone, another the sound zone. In the sound zone, what is happening? At the edge, uniaxial tensile deformation happen. So where the crack initiate, what happened? A deformation curve like this. So what is this type of deformation? This is the plane strain deformation. The forming limit curve is V shape. So this is the plane strain condition. So here at the less strain, failure is possible. Okay, let's analyze this thing. So I plotted the maximum, minimum, and out of plane, that means thickness strains, okay, with the distance at the edge and away from the edge, okay. So at the edge, tensile deformation is there. And after some distance, you can see that with strain crossing here, that means here, what is happening? The plane strain deformation happening. So here also it is observed that plane strain deformation happening. So at the less strain also the failure will happen in plane strain condition. That's why the cracking happens slightly interior. How much interior? That much interior. That much interior cracking will happen, okay, for flat bottom. And same type of observation you can see for hemispherical punch. Hemispherical punch also, you can see the localization and initiation of cracks slightly interior, but not so interior like flat bottom, but it is also interior. Suppose flat bottom here, so hemispherical here, okay, slightly towards the edge, but not from the edge, okay. The cause also same. So because of the punch geometry at the damage zone where crack initiate, almost plane strain deformation, but initially some change in the strain path is observed, okay. If we see that what type of deformation state, so at the edge uniaxial tensile and your width strain crossing 0 marks here. So this is the plane strain. Plane strain means what? Suppose you take a sheet, okay, it will increase in length, but there is no change in the width direction, okay. It will change in length, but width remain constant. So that means this direction strain is 0. So this is 0 strain. So this is the plane strain condition. We see that at almost 5 mm, the plane strain condition exists for flat bottom, but here it is almost 2.5 or 3 mm. Okay, so shifts toward the edge, but not at the edge. So like that, we can simulate the hole expansion ratio through the finite element simulation for different punch geometries, conical, flat bottom, and hemispherical, and those are validated by experimental results. Okay, so please remember that finite element simulation, you have to validate with experimental results. Material property, everything will be calibrated from the experimental results. Then you will get the accurate output. Okay, so please remember, garbage in, garbage out. Okay, in finite element simulation, if you give some input, you will get some output. So you have to proper knowledge that yes, my inputs are correct, process are correct, so my output correct. Okay, outputs are correct. Okay, so that understanding required for engineers. Okay, so engineers nowadays, no one writing the codes. Okay, the full code. Okay, so they use commercial software, Abacus, ANSYS. You can use. I also use material model. If you want to change material model, you can write that portion code and attach to the software. Okay, if you want to change the boundary condition, you write code, or nowadays software lots of option also available. You change that thing and use and serve your purpose. Okay, so so like that you have to verify with the experimental results, and you have to understand what is the physics, what is happening, you have to understand. Okay, you can't use blindly finite element analysis. So this is a tool to help you in your research or industrial use purpose. Now, slowly we are introducing the complexity. Still now we use that material is isotropic. Okay, that means assuming that material yield stays same in all direction. In rolling direction also, suppose 100 MPa, transverse direction also 100 MPa, 45-degree also 100 MPa, but it is not like that. Okay, because the roll material shows highly textured material, and it's older material, the elongated grains are there, so material yield stress varies with the direction. Okay, so rolling direction, some yield stress, suppose 100 MPa, transfer direction maybe 110 MPa. Okay, so if you do the isotopic analysis, so then variation in 10 MPa yield stress in the transfer direction, that is neglected, so that will introduce some error, okay, in your analysis. So you can take an isotopic material. Okay, so let's understand the anisotropic behavior of this material. So von Mises yield criteria, that 3D stress space, it is a cylinder. Okay, that cylinder axis lies throughout the center 0, point, and it is making equal angle to all axes. Clear? And in case of sheet metal, we are doing normally plane stress. So plane stress, because thickness, sheet thickness is too less, so you can neglect the stress in the thickness direction. That's a plane stress. So 2D you can consider. So 2D, so this is one axis and this is another axis. So von Mises yield surface can be expressed by this ellipse. Okay, and other characteristic you can specify like this hexagon. Okay, so von Mises yield criteria, it is ellipse. Okay, but for anisotropic material, so I have this collected this data from this literature, Leo, for DP780 steel. Okay, so von Mises yield criteria is dotted one, but the actual material follow this blue one. Okay, so this much of error is there. Okay, so to remove this much of error, you can choose the Hill yield criteria over the von Mises yield criteria. Okay, there is various types of yield criteria there. So Hill yield criteria I have chosen. There are many other yield criteria also available. So if the R value, the coefficient of normal anisotropy, if it is increasing, the ellipse will be changed like this. So what is ellipse? That is the yield surface into this stress state. Clear? So let's define the Hill 48 yield criteria. So how you can determine the constants and specify in the abacus? I'll show the procedure. So that is not available in the literature. You can understand from these slides. Okay, so this is the Hill yield criteria. In case of von Mises, instead of this is 1, 1, 1, and instead of this L, M, and N, these are the 3. If we put the sigma 2 minus sigma 3 square, sigma 3 minus sigma 1 square, sigma 1 minus sigma 2 square plus 6 tau 2 3 square plus 6 tau 3 1 square plus 6 tau 1 2 square. So that is the von Mises yield criteria. And instead of this, if I introduce 6 constant A, G, H, L, M, N, so those are the constants. Okay, in Hill yield criteria. So this is the generalized one. Okay, so von Mises is specialized one. So generalized yield criteria. So you can change the shape of the yield surface. So F, G, H are related to the yield stress at 3, 2, and 1 directions. Suppose in 3 direction yield stress is sigma y33, 2 directions sigma y22, 1 direction sigma y11. From this you can determine these F, G, H constants, and uh, it can be expressed in terms of R332 square plus R22 square minus R112 square, R1 1 or 2 2 or 3 3. Those are the hill potentials. We will see, and you have to specify the hill potentials in finite element simulation software. So how we can determine, we will discuss. And L and N are the related to shear yield stress. Okay. Here the sigma y and tau y. This sigma y and tau y, sorry, sigma y and tau y, these are the reference yield stress. Reference yield stress you can take, suppose in 1 1 direction or 3 3 direction yield stress I have taken as a reference yield stress. Okay, so then this will be my sigma yy, and this by root 3 will be tau yy. Clear? And R11, R22, R33, this is the ratios. So this is my reference yield stress sigma y, and 1 1 2 2 3 3, those are the yield stress in 1 1 2 2 and 3 3 directions. Okay, so these 6 potentials are there. Okay, but we are discussing for the seed material. So seed material 3 stresses are absent. So the yield criteria will be like this. Okay, so yield criteria will be like this because these 3 states are absent, and yield criteria, these material constants can be determined from the coefficient of anisotropy in 3 directions. Okay, so this G, H, F, N are related to these coefficients of anisotropies at different angles. Okay, that ratios are written, and after putting all these values in this equation, this Hill 48 yield criteria for the plane stress condition, it will be like this. Okay, so for this, okay, as 3 stresses are absent, so these potentials value will be 0, and these 3 potential values you can determine from this coefficient of anisotropy. Okay, so let understand the coefficient of anisotropy and how you can determine from the uniaxial tensor test. Okay, so in any simulation software you have to specify all these potentials. Okay, so potentials, what is the basis, how it is derived, how you can determine, that I am stating. Okay, so this is a uniaxial tensile test specimen. Okay, in this specimen we have to use laser extensometer or DIC based experimentation so that I can determine the 2 strains simultaneously. One is the axial, another is the width. So in width direction, what is the strain, and axial direction, what is the strain? I have to determine the simultaneously. Then coefficient of anisotropy, okay, the R value, that is the ratio of width strain by thickness strain. Okay, width strain by thickness strain you can specify like this. But for sheet, this is 1 mm sheet and specimen length is suppose 50 mm with 12 mm or 25 mm. Okay, so measurement of thickness, it is very difficult, and huge error will be introduced, okay, during measurement process. So that's why from the volume constant condition, that means change in that means the volume of the material, that means length, width, and thickness multiplication remain constant. If the volume constant condition, if you introduce, then this thickness strain you can introduce in terms of length and width. So R is the width strain by thickness strain, and that will be determined from this width strain. Because suppose this is width strain, dot means del, okay? This is thickness strain and longitudinal strain, that will be constant, 0, okay? Increment will be 0. So if I know this longitudinal and width, then I can determine the thickness, okay? From there it is determined. So from there the R ratio determined. Suppose a sheet I have taken and prepared the specimen along the rolling direction and 90 degree to the rolling direction, then R value at R0, similarly R90 I can determine. And if I prepare specimen 45 degree to the rolling direction, then R45 I can determine, okay? So like that, coefficient of anisotropy, it is also known as plastic strain ratio or Langford ratio, R value, different literature, different names are used, all are same. So from this R ratio, experimentally, you can determine these Hill potentials, okay? So Hill potentials, you have to specify. Let's see in finite element simulation that how you can specify. The Elmegard law I specify here, and a potential you have to specify, and potential I'm specifying, you can see that in finite element simulation software, this R11, R22, R33, R12, R13, R23 you have to specify, and all these constant you have to determine from the experimentation. Tensile experiment you can determine. This additional thing you have to specify, and you have to specify the normal direction and rolling direction so that software can understand in which direction you are selecting. So I am defining one coordinate and then specify, okay, like this. You can see I am specifying. So you have to specify in the software and then you get the result, okay? So here I am not introducing any damage zone, okay? Only the seat with the Hill criteria. In Hill criteria, Hill stress is different in different direction. If I specified that at different angle at the edge, you can see the thickness will be how much, okay? At 45 direction, thickness is less, okay? Whereas 90 and 0 direction, it is high. So then what will happen? So cracking will start from there also, there only. The thickness reduction is high, so hoop strain will be high, so cracking will be high. So if I introduce, if I don't introduce any geometrical discontinuity, still I can simulate. Why? Because material inhomogeneity is there, okay, by means of what? Anisotropic yield criteria, okay? So I take 3 points in 3 locations, okay? So this is the material FLC, that means forming limit curve. This is the fracture limit curve, and 3 locations, 0 degree, 45 degree, and 90 degree. I choose the deformation path, okay? So deformation path, you can see that there the failure happen in case of 45 degree angle. If I use the Hill criteria. Okay, so this is the brief view that how gradually, step by step, if introduce the different complexities in your simulation. axisymmetric and cell element simulation. Okay, and if you use the isotropic material property, that means von Mises yield criteria, what you can expect, and if you use the anisotropic yield criteria, what you can expect. We briefly we discuss that. Okay, so this is up to you, Dr. Jogesh.
Yes, sir.
So we can I think take questions from the audience.
So, sir, first of all, I want to ask you a couple of questions. That is, so if we do the tensile testing and if we have the data of a stress strain, true stress versus true strain curve or engineering stress curve data. So, what is the procedure in general to what the procedure of curve fitting, sir? If we have the data,
Yeah.
because this is not given anywhere, sir.
Yeah. So it is very simple. So there is procedure. If you see the original literature of this LMAGAD, or what are the process, just
Because in any kind of material model there are constants and we have to evaluate those constants.
yes.
So is there any softwares or mathematical tools are available to do the curve fitting?
not mathematical tool. You have to understand the equation and fit. Let understand this equation.
Okay.
So this stress is equal to some initial stress plus some k constant, okay, 1 minus e to the power some constant f sub p, okay, and another constant c f sub p, okay.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So in this, so sigma 0 is the initial yield stress. So that is
Yes,
very
sir.
simple.
That is very simple.
This is the sigma 0.
Okay, sir.
Clear? So sigma 0 we obtain. Now look at this. So this equation. So this equation, what is this? This is a line equation. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
And what is this equation? This equation exponential decay. So this will be like this. After that, this will be constant. Clear?
Okay.
And this equation gradually increase. So at the end, what will be the slope? Okay. So slope of this curve. So you have this curve. Okay. You know the slope of this curve. So this slope will be C. Clear?
Okay. Okay.
C you determine. Now you have two more constant, B and K. Okay. And take that point. Okay. And what is this? Suppose this is alpha value. Okay. This alpha is nothing but yes, sir. K by B plus C into this much of strain. Suppose this strain is EP01. So C into EP01. Okay. So KB.
So this type of fundamental is given in any kind of reference book, so we can brush up all these things.
Reference book, I have to check.
Okay, sir.
But that model, that proposed model, the initial paper you can get.
Sir, I have seen in basically I will work. I always work on Abacus, but I have seen for the hyperelastic materials in ANSYS there is facility to do the curve fitting. This is the facilities given, but in Abacus there is no facilities given. So either we have to do the experimental work, but if we are not having those facilities, so how can we determine those constants?
So you have to, stepwise you have to fit the curve, yes. So there is no other shortcut. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sir, there is one in axisymmetric analysis. You have shown one picture of yellow one. So and at that time we have not introduced the stress triaxiality over there in this analysis. Have you introduced already? Yes, yes.
Stress
This one.
triaxiality you can calculate in the post processing. In post processing,
So
you
in
can,
field output request.
yeah, field output.
So, but
You,
during modeling, whether we have to do the input of this stress
no,
triaxiality,
no.
but still it will come.
Still it will come. You have to post process it.
Yes, sir.
So after getting data, you can easily post process. Okay. So
Okay.
pressure output you can get from Abacus. Okay.
Okay.
So pressure nothing but hydrostatic stress minus. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the pressure. So what is the stress triaxiality equation? So it is the hydrostatic stress by equivalent stress. Okay. Equivalent means
So
one means
whether we will get this contour plot directly, sir, after analysis.
yeah, you have to do this calculation in the post process, and you can post process and save this parameter as trace triaxiality. Okay.
Okay.
And trace triaxiality you can be view or any other parameter you can also post process like this.
Okay.
That
So it will
facility
not
available.
come directly.
Yeah. It
That is the question.
yeah, not directly come,
Yes.
but indirectly it will come. You just
Okay.
write one line thing and it will come.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So I will ask the participants to ask some relevant questions. If you have any queries about the talk the sir has presented just now, he has given a very wonderful talk and a right from fundamentals up to the industrial applications. Anyone want to ask any question? Yes. Anybody has any question? Sir, I am following you on Google Scholar and all the alerts. I am checking about your research continuously, and I am also taking one BTech project on this stretch flangeability because I am done my thesis on stretch flanging, and my co-guide is from CSIR MPRI Bhopal, and some other scholars also. One is Suren Kumar. He has also done PhD from CSIR MPRI, and he has raised the question. What is your question, Suren? Do you have any questions, Suren? So, sir, I am writing a research article, review article on stress fungibility of sheet metals. I am reading your papers also.
Yeah, you can get detailed information in my this review paper.
Yes, sir.
That is recently published. You can get a overview. Okay.
Okay, sir. So thank you, sir. Thank you.